After the stroke, 7 changes happening inside the body right now. Most stroke survivors who seem fine have a second stroke within 5 years, and almost nobody tells their family why. The stroke itself was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of one. Right now, in the hours, days, and weeks that follow, the body is going through 7 profound changes. Some of them are invisible, some look like recovery, and some are warning signs that most families completely miss. If you care for someone who has had a stroke, stay until the end, because change number 5 is the one that most families get completely wrong. Understanding what is happening inside the body after a stroke could be the most important thing you ever learn. Let's start with the first 24 hours and what is happening deep inside the brain. Change number 1. The brain begins to swell. A stroke cuts off blood flow to part of the brain. And when that happens, the surrounding tissue does not just stop working. It begins to swell. This is called cerebral edema, and it typically peaks within 24 to 72 hours after the stroke. Here is what most people do not know. This swelling can actually cause more damage than the stroke itself. It squeezes healthy brain tissue. It raises pressure inside the skull, and it can cause sudden changes in consciousness, confusion, or physical weakness, even after the person seemed to be improving. This is why the first 72 hours are the most critical, and why medical monitoring during this window can be life-saving. Now, here is something that surprises most people. Even doctors do not always warn families about this. Change number 2. The brain tries to rewire itself. Here is the remarkable part. The brain does not simply accept the damage. It begins to respond. Within days of a stroke, a process called neuroplasticity begins. Healthy neurons near the damaged area start forming new connections. They try to take over the functions that were lost. This is why rehabilitation matters so much, and why it needs to start early. Every time a stroke survivor practices a movement or works to form a word, they are literally building new pathways in the brain. The window for the most rapid recovery is the first 3 to 6 months. What happens in that window shapes the rest of their life. But while the brain is trying to heal, something else is happening that is far less visible. Change number 3. The heart becomes vulnerable. Most people think of a stroke as a brain event, but after a stroke, the heart is also at serious risk. The same stress hormones that flood the body during and after a stroke can trigger irregular heart rhythms. One of the most dangerous is atrial fibrillation, an erratic heartbeat that significantly increases the risk of a second stroke. Up to 25% of stroke survivors experience a second stroke within 5 years, and the second one is often more severe. This is why heart monitoring after a stroke is not optional. It is essential. Stop for a moment, because the next change is one that almost no one prepares for. Change number 4. Sleep changes completely. After a stroke, many survivors sleep far more than before. 12 hours, 14 hours, sometimes more. Families often see this as a good sign. The body is resting, healing, and partly that is true. But there is another side to this. Post-stroke fatigue is different from normal tiredness. It does not go away with rest, and it can last for months or even years. There is also a higher risk of sleep apnea after a stroke, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops during sleep. This reduces oxygen to the brain at night, slows recovery, and increases the risk of another stroke. If the person is sleeping heavily and waking up exhausted, that is worth telling the doctor. Now, let's talk about the change that families most often misunderstand.
Now let's talk about the change that families most often misunderstand. Change number 5. The emotional brain shifts after a stroke. Up to 1/3 of survivors experience depression, but this is not just sadness about what happened. Post-stroke depression is neurological. The stroke may have physically damaged the parts of the brain that regulate mood. You might notice sudden crying with no clear reason, emotional outbursts, laughing at inappropriate moments. This is called pseudobulbar affect, and it is not something they can control. Families sometimes feel hurt by it, or confused, or even rejected. But understanding that it is neurological, not emotional withdrawal, not ingratitude, changes how you respond. And that changes everything for the person healing. If this is helping you understand what someone you love is going through, subscribing takes 1 second and helps this channel reach more families who need it. Now let's keep going. The next change is one you can see with your own eyes. Change number 6. The body forgets how to move. After a stroke, many survivors experience weakness or paralysis on one side of the body. But it is not that the muscles stopped working. It is that the brain lost its connection to them. The signals that used to travel automatically, raise your hand, take a step, hold a cup, are interrupted. The body, in a sense, has forgotten. But here is what matters. Forgetting is not the same as losing. With consistent early rehabilitation, those connections can be rebuilt, not always fully, not always quickly, but the brain has a capacity to adapt that scientists are still discovering. Progress may be slow, but it is real. And finally, the change that affects every single relationship around the person who survived. Change number 7. The personality can change. This is the one people talk about the least. After a stroke, a person's personality can shift. Someone who was patient may become irritable. Someone who was quiet may become impulsive. Someone who was warm may seem distant. This is not them choosing to be different. The stroke may have affected the frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and social behavior. For families, this can be the hardest part, because the person is here, they survived. But in some ways, they feel different. And grieving that change while also caring for them is one of the most complicated emotional experiences a family can face. You are allowed to feel that, and you are not alone in it. Final. Conclusion. A stroke changes the body in ways that are not always visible from the outside. Swelling inside the brain, a heart working harder to stay stable, neurons searching for new paths, a body that has forgotten how to move, sleep that does not restore, emotions that no longer follow the old rules, and a personality that may have quietly shifted. None of this is simple, none of it is fast, but understanding what is happening, truly understanding it, gives you something powerful: patience, presence, and the ability to show up for someone in exactly the way they need. If this video helped you understand something important, share it with someone who might need it. And if you want to understand what the body goes through in the final stages of illness, that video is next, because the more we understand, the less we fear, and the better we love.